Well, welcome back to Kitchen Table TCG. Today we're going to look at the weekly top 10. We're going to number it 10 to 1 by percentage gain, and then we'll go the other way for percentage loss. This uses all my market update information from the other videos throughout the week. If you're not a patron yet, head on over to patreon.com/KitchenTableTCG to see if it's right for you. For just $5 a month, you get access to all my data as a collection tracker. It's a great way to kind of track the value of your collection, kind of track if you have all the cards in the set, and just keep track of things. And that's not the only perk as a patron. Patrons have plenty of perks. Go ahead and look at it at the website. But if you are interested in more of my opinions on stuff, at a $15 tier, I do have a podcast called If I Were Investing, where I kind of share all the fun stuff I would be doing if I had the amount of money to invest in Flesh and Blood. But without further ado, let's hop into the top 10 winners of Flesh and Blood through this week with our top 10 cards to gain value, number 10 to 1 by percentage gain. And actually, before we get into it, we are going to do a quick recap on Drone of Brutality. Last week, the Drone of Brutality numbers were up like crazy as the announcement came out that the Drone of Brutality was banned. And I kind of said it was kind of crazy what people were doing, and I think I was right. We see across the boards decreases of around 40 to 100% on this card this week. I think this was a flash in the pan. I think some of the drones will hold value as people just won't sell them back, but I think your values are going to start just kind of trickling down from this point as things are down already 40 to 100% depending on the card. And we probably will not continue to follow the Drone of Brutality because it just isn't that interesting anymore because the market is crazy this week. So let's get into the number 10 card to gain value. This was Tectonic Plating, the legendary alpha cold foil. Last week this was at $1,100. This week it's at around $2,000. That's a gain of about 74%. And I think it's going to be very, very difficult to find any legendary cold foils under $2,000 or even at $2,000. The cards are just so rare. You're thinking like 817 of these Tectonic Platings exist in the world. So with the print numbers that came out being lower than everybody anticipated, these cards are going to retain this value and probably only move up, and they probably are already up over the $2,000. It would be difficult to find one, I think, right now, but the last sold was at $2,000. And at number 9, we have the 9th Blade of the Blood Oath. This is the first edition rainbow foil version. Last week was selling around $70. This week we had a sold listing at $130. That's a gain of 85%. Everything this week can be tied back to the print run announcement. And, Majestic super rares they aren't crazy rare, but there are just few of them. And as people do these numbers and evaluate how many of each card actually exists, they're starting to put some numbers together and compare them to the legendaries and compare them to the eye or the heart and see the things that are undervalued. And a super rare at around $70, if you look at the print runs, is undervalued. So that's what happened there. And at number 8, speaking of things that are undervalued, the cold foil commons. I've been talking about it for weeks. The cold foil commons are just incredibly undervalued if you consider the print run. And I know there are other things that go into the valuation, but a cold foil common at $300, and there's only 200 more of each specific one than a legendary that's selling for $2,000, just doesn't make a lot of sense. And then on top of that, cold foil commons, some of them are really, really playable, like Snapdragon Scalers here, a super playable cold foil common that we'll see play. And so last week was selling at $290, this week at $550. That's a gain of 89%. And again, I'm seeing them sell like crazy at $550, so they might even continue to rise. And in number 7, another cold foil common. I think 3 of them made the list, and then there's a bunch of them right after the top 10. Last week, this was at $170. This week, it's at $325. That's a gain of 91%. I don't think that this has as much playability as Snapdragon Scalers, but at $170 last week, it was just really low compared to where Snapdragon Scalers had already hit the $300 mark last week. So that's kind of why this one is kind of on the list. It's just the market accepting cold foil commons at the average as at least $300, and honestly, you're going to see that push up this over the next couple weeks. But that's why you see a 91% increase on Hope Merchant's Hood here. And in number 7, we have Iron Song Determination. Again, another super rare. Last week was sitting at $60. This week at $124. That's a gain of 107%. This is the Alpha Rainbow Foil Edition. And as much impact as this had on the market in terms of like the heart and the eye, everyone is taking those numbers and applying it downwards onto all the lower value cards and understanding that even the lower value cards are incredibly valuable. So Ironsong Determination, this is again a warrior card. You're going to see a lot more warrior cards on the list as all the cards are connected to gameplay as well, and warrior is seeing a lot of play in the meta right now. At number 5, we have Red in the Ledger. This is the Rainbow Foil first edition card that was on the list of the cards to lose the most value last week. And this is just market retracement. I said last week that $130 was a mispriced card, but I just kind of share with you the facts of what is happening on the market. So this is the market saying, nope, 130 was way too low. 250 is the security of a majestic Rainbow Foil. And, I think that this card even sold before the print run announcement too. So I think it would be interesting to see where the majestic Rainbow Foils end up after that print run announcement. I know Light and Strike and all those things are already higher, but the class specific ones. And in number 4, we have another cold foil legendary. Last week sitting at $1,500. The Brave Forge Bracers this week, one sold for $3,200. That's a gain of 114%. And this is where I'm kind of guessing we will start seeing most of the legendaries end up at, is somewhere between $3,000 and $4,000 before we see another big increase eventually. But people are going to start taking double their money. And last week, if you bought a cold foil Brave Forge Bracers for $1,500, you can double your money this week. And a lot of people see that in the TCG world and like to double their money. And so that's where we're seeing some of the things. We'll see a stop point every now and then, and that seems to be where we're going to go. So now in number 3, we have Route. This is the Alpha Edition Rainbow Foil. Last week, this card was at $50. This week, it's at $120. It's a gain of 140%. Another super rare Rainbow Foil. That's 3 on the list, saying that those were potentially all undervalued compared now with the print run numbers. But again, I want to highlight, this is another warrior card. We're seeing a lot of the warrior cards moving up and up and up, as again, even the collectible market of this game is dictated in some ways by the player base, and the player base is seeing all these cards and saying, oh man, it'd be cool to have an alpha edition, and that's what's driving the value of the cards up. So it's all connected to the players. And at number 2, Tome of the Aetherwind. This is a super rare. This is the first edition Rainbow Foil. Last week, $40 for a super rare. This week seems like a steal, right? And so going up to $100, which is still, not quite as high as that Route was, but the impressive part is the percentage gain at 150%, and that's kind of what we track here. And Tome of the Aetherwind, it's a beautiful card, first edition Rainbow Foil. This is probably just one of those market things that happens as people finish their sets, and it's the only one on the market, and yada yada yada. I don't know that I would necessarily say that the Wizard cards are as valuable as some of the other cards that are seeing more play. And in number 1 is Mordred Tide. This is the first edition non-foil, moving from $35 and a sold listing at $100, which is a gain of 185%. And honestly, this seems overpriced to me. I think that the market maybe was just dry and somebody needed it again to finish a collection, or panicked at the print run changes. I don't think that we will see these majestic non-foils averaging this high quite yet. Long term, I think $100 in 5 years potentially is a steal, but right now this seems excessive for the market. And keep in mind, the market is still really reacting, so a lot of things are going to be moving over the next couple weeks. Make sure that you stay updated on the channel for all that stuff. Alright, and now let's move on to the top 10 cards to lose value. We'll start with number 10 and go down to number 1, which will be the card that lost the most value. So at number 10, we have Absorption Dome. This is the first edition from Crucible of War. First time Crucible of War has even appeared in this video. This is the normal version, going down from $10 to $8, a loss of 24%. And you're going to start seeing a lot of normal versions, non-foil. Actually, only one foil version made the loser list this week in the top 10, as the print run numbers definitely affected the foil versions. It doesn't appear to have affected the non-foil versions of cards very much, because the print run is still high on those cards. What people are starting to see is the rarity of foil versions. So that's what you're about to see. And Absorption Dome, this is just a typical reaction. But going into number 9, Bonehead Barrier, again, alpha non-foil version. Last week was sitting at $12. This week sitting at $9. That's a loss of 25%. And if you just look at how many more of each of these cards were printed compared to the foil versions, you can start seeing that it's going to take the market a long time to catch up. It's going to take the market a long time for it to start reaching these non-foil versions of cards when news like this happens. And so cards like Bonehead Barrier that doesn't see much play, cards like Absorption Dome that doesn't see much play, are all going to be very, very slow to move. And then right now what we're seeing is just kind of typical market fluctuation, give or take 25%. And in number 8, we have the Cranial Crush, again another super rare that's an alpha non-foil that sits up anywhere from $10 to $12, and now this week went from $12 to $9 as a loss of 25%. But again, it just simply put that these cards are just not rare enough to kind of spike when news like this happens yet. Now, when our community is bigger and people start speccing on cards like this, that might happen. But for now, the cards that don't see a lot of play in the main decks and just simply are the non-foil, there's just more of them. This is the type of thing that you're going to see. Now, before I get too much into that, we also had a card right here at number 7 in Glint the Quicksilver. This is another Alpha Edition normal card that did lose value, but this is a card that does see play. So it was interesting to see that. This sale went from 65 to 48, which is a loss of 26%. And you know what? This card was sold before the spike happened, before the announcement was made. Remember, the announcement happened, I think, on Thursday or Friday or something, and so the cards that sold previous to that kind of lost out on the potential gains on the spike. So it'll be very interesting. I think this card will probably pop up on the next week's top 10 cards to gain value, or somewhere in that list. Maybe it won't make the top 10, but it might make that list somewhere in there. And going to number 7, another crew card. This is another non-foil card. This one is Righteous Cleansing. Again, Guardian cards, just not seeing a ton of play right now. Nobody's really speccing on them for Monarch. It just seems like a weird place for it, especially in the non-foil version. I mean, the artwork's super cool, but that's really all that it has going for it right now. Last week was at $26. This week's at $19. That's a loss of 27%. And again, a lot of those crew cards are just kind of doing their typical market stuff right now, and it's not really affected by the announcement that happened. So that's where you start seeing a Righteous Cleansing, that there's a bunch of them in the non-foil version. And a loss of 27% is not significant. And I will say all the losses on this list are very insignificant, especially compared to like last week. Number 5, we have Induction Chamber. This card went from $29 to $20. That's a loss of 31%. This is an Arcane Rising first edition, again, non-foil version. And again, 31%, I mean, this could happen all the time, but what's happening here is that these cards have not rebounded or not been propelled up from the market update that happened and propelled up from the announcement that happened. There's just too many of non-foil induction chambers for it to really take place in 1 week. So that's kind of what's happening here. And again, Mechanologist is not a super popular class right now. We're starting to see that affects it. Now, here's the key, though. This is the kind of outlier in the whole group. This is a Art of War first edition rainbow foil. Last week sitting at $650. This week sold for $420. That's a loss of 36%. And this was an eBay sale that kind of confused me. I don't really understand exactly why it sold so low. There was enough evidence of a sale of $65 or $650 in the marketplaces. It seemed like a bizarre one, but it is the market information. I really expect that the next Art of War we see will be significantly higher than $420. Do not sell your Art of War at $420. At number 3, we have Last Ditch Effort. Again, everything that I've said about the super rares applies here, but this is also the normal version. Everything that I've said applies. Last week it was at $10. This week's at $6. It's a loss of 40%. Nobody plays the card, and on top of that, it just simply, there's too many of them in the market. And that's what you're starting to see. So those kind of super rares, I mean, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 super rares on this list, all non-foil. So really important to understand that the amount of cards in the market really does help move or subtract things in terms of when announcements are made in the market. And at number 2, this is Runeblood Barrier. Again, this is the non-foil version. The rainbow foil version is actually on the increase list. It did not make the top 10, but it is pretty close. And the rainbow foil version has been going up for 3 or 4 weeks. But this is the first edition non-foil, the normal version, going from $35 to $20. That's a loss of 42%. And I don't really know what to say about that. When you see the rainbow foil version continuing to increase, it makes me believe that simply put, this is just one of those market things that just happens that when I checked the market stats, $20 was the one that had most recently sold, and there was one available. So just keep that all in mind. And then at number 1, we have Sand Sketched Plan. This is, again, a super rare non-foil. Again, 5 of them on the list for the losing cards. That's a loss of $3 from $7 to $4 of 42%. Now, before we get to the end of this, I do want to say that the highest card to lose value this week was 42%, which is really nothing compared to what we usually see in the market. Usually we see some cards that are moving up or down like 50 to 75% occasionally. And really, we do not see that right now. The market is kind of on fire, and it's been really difficult for any cards to lose significant value. That's why you're seeing all these kind of low value cards here in the top 10 to lose cards. Hey, thanks so much for joining. I hope that this video was helpful to you. If you want to support the channel, if you want to support me and my content and my dream to do Kitchen Table TCG here on YouTube, head over to my Patreon. It's just $5 a month. You get access to a collection tracker that has all these numbers on it for you. It updates weekly when I do my market updates. Then I also have a podcast that's kind of more of my opinions on the market and what I would be buying if I were investing. And I do dabble now and then in investing, but I don't have those big wig, huge money. So, hey, thank you all for being here. Hope you enjoyed it. Hey, remember to be kind to the people around you.